Commentary from the undefeated author Jesse Washington analyzes the context of that quote, writing in part, now that Jordan has clarified the origin and context of the quote and admitted he was selfish, we can see the cost he paid to become the Jordan brand. That cost also paid for the freedom of today's players. Jordan deserves credit for how LeBron can be so vocal today. On that note, we welcome an NBA analyst, Jay Williams. Jay, great to have you with us, and I'm going to start with you here, Jay. Did Jordan make it easier for today's NBA players to have a voice and speak out on social issues?
Well, I think a lot of people blazed the trail for guys to come out today and to speak their feelings about how they feel. I mean, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, a lot of other players, Bill Russell spoke out, a lot of Jim Brown spoke out. I don't think it's just Jordan that, eased the road for guys to come out and speak today. Do I think that Jordan had a pretty big role in that? Yes, I do. And actually, I come on this show today with a lot of appreciation for Michael Jordan for opening that door. I think that the lack of willingness of Michael Jordan at that time, and Molly, I don't know where some of the things that kind of prohibited Michael Jordan from speaking out on those type of issues back then. Things were different back then. That's not typical of what athletes did. But the lack of willingness for him to speak out, I think, did allow a next generation to see those things and to have more willingness to speak out about those things. And that brings me to this ultimate conversation. And this is personally how I feel. This is subjective, and other people are allowed to feel whatever way they want to feel. When we consider the greatest of all time, this is why I think LeBron James is the greatest of all time. I think that the lack of willingness of Michael Jordan to speak out brings me to the ultimate conclusion that LeBron James, putting his career in jeopardy to speak out about things that he feels are personally relevant to him and about where we are. And I do feel like LeBron James has had some mishaps. He's had some missteps. But ultimately, you feel like he is on the path. And once again, this is subjective, and this can cause people to be divided. I understand that. And Michael Jordan didn't divide people at that time as far as it relates to political things. But I do like the fact that LeBron stands up and speaks out on the injustices that are happening in the world. And when I look at guys, when we talk about greatest of all time, I think about Muhammad Ali, I think about guys like Jim Brown, and I think about guys like LeBron James. Was Michael Jordan maybe the greatest basketball player skill set that we've ever seen? Yes. Yes. And championships? Yes. But ultimately, when I talk about the greatest of all time, it's about, are you transcending and standing for something bigger than yourself? Bigger than yourself, bigger than your sport, for things that are happening in our world. And for that being the theme, LeBron James is the greatest of all time. In that regard, he is.
I completely and utterly disagree with you, respectfully. The reason why is because if it wasn't for what Michael Jordan did for the game of basketball, LeBron James and those boys would not have been in a position to do what they do in terms of the impact that they have had. I would remind you that over the first 11 years of Michael Jordan's career, his average NBA salary was $4 million. I'm sorry, LeBron made more than that his rookie year in the National Basketball Association. I would also remind you of this, Jay Williams, because you'd remember this. Years ago, over a decade ago, a teammate of LeBron James at the time by the name of Ira Newbill had presented a letter to and placed it. It was a letter. It was an open letter to the Republic of China, and he was talking about their assistance or them, their assistance with what was transpiring in Darfur and Sudan, where hundreds of thousands of human beings were being slaughtered and what have you, and how he was appalled by what was transpiring because his dad was an activist. He presented an open letter to his teammates, left it on each of their chairs inside the locker room. Only 3 players didn't sign it. It was an open letter, and he was going to send it to China and all of that stuff, publicize it. Only 3 players didn't sign it. David Wesley was out on personal leave. You had Damon Jones, who I believe had a shoe deal or something like that with China. And LeBron James just elected not to sign it at that particular moment in time. He said he needed to learn more about what was transpiring before he would take a position, and he was roundly criticized for that. ultimately, I believe he did an interview, and obviously since that particular moment in time, he's been willing to tackle an abundance of issues, and he deserves a boatload of credit for that. We all saw what they did at the ESPYs, him, Melo, CP3, D. Wade. We get all of that. But it is impossible to ignore that when we think about the Muhammad Ali's, the Kurt Floods, and others from an historical civil rights perspective, and then we transition to later on in life with Michael Jordan and some of the things that he had to tackle in terms of taking the NBA product mainstream, not just being about black appeal, but mass appeal, and in his case, ultimately international, global appeal. When LeBron James came along, that already existed because the NBA brand had elevated. He had already made hundreds of millions of dollars, had a $90 million contract with Nike, if I recall, at that particular moment in time, not to mention his NBA salary, even though he was doing business with China and he was very popular back then, around 2008 or whatever. All I'm saying is the challenges that LeBron James and them have faced, there's a lot of things me, you, Max, and many, many others would tackle if we did not have to worry about our quality of life being drastically compromised. I'm saying Jordan and everybody before him had to be concerned about that. By the time LeBron James and others spoke out, they did not have to be concerned about that. That is a difference. That shouldn't take away but so much from LeBron James and his conscience and the good brother that he is to speak on these issues. But we can't ignore that reality.